I used to think marriages die in arguments. They do not. They die quietly, minute by minute, while the person you love learns how to silence you. Tonight, my wife taught me that lesson. At 11:58 p.m., my calls stacked up like nails 17. Each bounced to voicemail like spam, not her husband. The house smelled like dinner gone cold. The screen over the sink reflected our kitchen like a crime scene. I told myself traffic, a dead phone, a late meeting. Then Amex pinged. Ember Hotel, table for two, champagne. The lie went from fog to concrete. I breathed once. I didn't throw a plate. I set one down. I opened a folder on my laptop and named it Project Silent Storm. When her key finally turned, she came in whistling a song we used to dance to. She thought she was bringing me the truth. She had no idea I'd already buried it, and I was about to exhume the proof. Most mornings in Muller run on muscle memory. I grind Colombian beans, set 2 mugs on the counter, and crack 3 eggs into a skillet that's worn smooth from years of breakfasts. Public radio hums low from KUT 90.5, the kind of calm voices that make traffic and politics sound survivable. Sam breezes through the kitchen in her navy blazer, always 5 minutes early and 1 step ahead. I hand her the to-go mug of 2 sugars, never cream, and kiss her forehead. She smiles, thanks me, and checks her phone while I butter toast to the edge, not over it. It's ordinary, and ordinary is a blessing men my age don't take for granted. I rinse the pan, watch sunlight, find the dent in our old table, and think about the weekend lawn that always needs mowing. When the garage door rumbles shut, the house exhales. Then my phone pings once just a quiet tone, but the message lands like a pebble in a still pond. Big day launch meeting, Sam texts. Might be late. Yes, so it's not a new sentence. Corporate life runs on might be late. I fire off a thumbs up, then toss my lunch into the passenger seat and head toward Taylor, past the billboards, past the morning commuters staring straight ahead like racehorses in blinders. Reliability work is about patterns. What holds, what breaks, and when. At the plant, I log a service ticket, listen to a motor that's a hair too loud, and schedule a bearing swap before it fails. That's the trick. Beat the failure to the punch. Around lunch, I check my phone again. Another ping. Grant added a debrief. Might push dinner. I pocket the phone. Tell myself the same thing I tell young techs. Don't chase noise. Chase signals. By late afternoon, the motor sings right, the ticket closes, and the day feels steady. Then, right on cue, the sun drops, and my stomach tightens for no good reason. On the drive home, I pass the H-E-B, think about picking up rosemary for chicken, then remember it's date night the first Tuesday, our little contract with ourselves. We've kept it through job changes, flu seasons, even the year we lost her dad. I set the table early, real plates, cloth napkins like my mother used on Sundays. At 6, my phone lights. Running behind Grant wants a quick brainstorm. I text a smile and type, no worries, I'll keep dinner warm. It's true, I've kept things warm for 17 years. The radio shifts to classic country. I turn it down. At 6:30, the butter on the potatoes firms at the edges. At 6:45, I reheat the green beans and pretend that's normal. A second text at 7, almost done. I put my phone face up like a lighthouse. By 7:30, the house smells like patience. Then 8 o'clock ticks past, and a quiet thought I don't like taps my shoulder. 9 won't feel like dinner anymore. Seasoned men know drift when they see it. One late night becomes Thursdays, then Tuesdays, then whatever the calendar says. Names repeat. Grant, Grant, Grant. I hear them in Sam's recaps over the dishwasher hum. How he pushes for greatness. How he thinks 3 moves ahead. Good leaders do that. Bad ones borrow your life to do it. I try not to keep score, but I do keep time. I stop resetting the table at 6 and start at 7. I eat half my dinner and save half in case she's starving when she walks in. I switch from glasses to a tumbler because the ice lasts longer. When she finally comes through the door, I collect details the way I collect failed bearings, quietly, respectfully, because each one tells you something. New perfume with a bite, new blazer cut sharper than last month, and a smile that's bright, sure, but late. Sorry, she says. Great session. I nod and tuck the word session into the drawer where I keep spares. It's 8:47 p.m. when my phone chirps. American Express keeps better records than memory. Ember Hotel, Ember Room, 402 18th. The line items follow like footprints. 2 entrees, 1 champagne, dessert split down the middle. I stare at the screen long enough for the ice in my glass to surrender. I don't rage. Maybe that surprises you. Men who fix things learn early. Tools don't care about temper. I take a screenshot, name it one Ember, and drop it into a new folder called Evidence. It's a cold word for a warm room, but it keeps my head straight. I cover the leftovers, turn off the burner, and open the back door for a breath that doesn't come easy. Across the street, the Hendersons are laughing at something on TV, the blue light flickering like a campfire. I remember when our kitchen looked like that, all jokes and crumbs. I shut the door, lock it, and place the Amex email beside the fork Sam didn't use. I back up the folder to an external drive because backups have saved me more times than prayer. A second email from Amex drops into my inbox. Parking validation Ember Garage. I add it to the pile, then scroll messages, finding a new habit I hate. I'm analyzing my wife like a broken pump. I search my own name. The last time Sam texted "can't wait" was 6 weeks ago, the night we tried a new taco place that used too much lime. For balance, I hunt for generosity. I find it in her FaceTime call to my mom on her birthday, the way she leaned into the screen and made that woman feel seen. People aren't one thing. They're a ledger with marks on both sides. I close the laptop before the ledger turns into a verdict. Then I open it again. I drag a new folder into Evidence, 02 Timeline. If I'm going to be fair, I'm going to be thorough. The cursor blinks like a metronome. It's funny what stands out when you're looking. The perfume has a high note now, something you'd smell in a glass case near the register. Her passcode changed. Her phone is face down more often than not. These aren't crimes, they're crumbs. The toothbrush in the travel case faces the wrong direction, and the blazer she swore she returned to Nordstrom now lives at the front of the closet. I log what I can without touching what isn't mine. Older guys taught me that distinction when they trained me. Own your mistakes and don't take what you didn't buy. When Sam showers, the steam smells like jasmine instead of vanilla, and that's fine, people change. But the bottle on the shelf reads a brand I've seen in department stores. The places she says are too much show for too little substance. I'll write it down anyway, because the more you want to throw out clues, the more you need to keep them. Date night comes around again like a test you forgot to study for. I lay out the plates, then put them back. I stop lighting candles because a lit wick feels like a lie. When Sam sits, her phone sits too, half an inch higher than the placemat, screen black, camera pointed anywhere but me. We eat. The conversation skims safe ground, deadlines, traffic, a funny email from the office. I ask about her mother's knee. She asks about the plant's new line. It should feel like a partnership. It feels like customer service. After dinner, she takes her call outside so you can relax. And I'm grateful for the 5 minutes of silence that follow. Then I'm angry at myself for being grateful. When she comes back in, I make a joke about the HOA, and she laughs in the right places, and the evening folds itself into something harmless. Later, in bed, I turn my phone face up, and hers stays turned down. At 2:11 a.m., I stop pretending I'm asleep and go to the kitchen. The fridge hums. The house shifts. I open the laptop and type Project Silent Storm. It sounds dramatic, sure, but naming things gives me a handhold. I drag in the receipt and the parking validation. I add notes with times, not feelings. Feelings don't sort well. A new folder, 03 Accounts. I list what's joint, what's mine, what's ours in spirit but hers in practice. A man I respect once told me, if you ever find yourself walking through fog, mark the fence posts. Evidence is fence posts. I'm not building a case, I'm building clarity. The cursor waits for me to lie to it. I don't. I log the last 3 late nights with dates, the one canceled dentist appointment, and the text that read, "Don't wait up." Then I close the laptop and stare at the blank window over the sink until it stares back. Morning finds me at the junk drawer, the one every house owns. Tape, batteries, stray screws, the warranty for a toaster we no longer have. I slide a thin notebook in there, the kind you'd mistake for grocery lists. Inside, I sketch the timeline like a tech draws out a process flow, not to pin her to the wall, just to stop gaslighting myself. Self-doubt is sneaky. It borrows your voice and talks you into standing still. I enjoyed the kindness too, the coffee she brought me last Tuesday, the way she touched my shoulder when I was cursing the mower. That's important. Otherwise, you're building a villain instead of a picture. I stick the notebook under the duct tape, right where I'll find it later, but no one else will look. When I shut the drawer, it 6 for a beat, then slides home with a click. The house is quiet. I tell myself I'll give it a week. Then the week starts shrinking. At the plant, a younger engineer gets walked out. Good kid. Wrong choice. He'd ignored a lockout procedure because it would only take a second. The second turned into an incident. The incident turned into a pink slip. We stand in the break room and drink coffee that tastes like cardboard, and nobody says anything that helps. Rules are there to protect the people who think they don't need them. I sign a refresher on ethics and notice our company's language about relationships and conflicts. Clear, boring, binding. My mind does the lazy math. Every serious workplace has a version of this. Valor Tech does too. I picture Grant, the way Sam describes his edge, and I wonder whether edge includes policy. On the drive home, a black truck cuts me off on I-35, and I brake hard enough to rattle the coins in the console. That's how fast a normal day turns. You look away for 1 second, and now your hands are white on the wheel. I don't call a buddy. I call Natalie, my sister, the attorney who uses soft words to deliver hard truths. We meet at a diner that makes eggs right and coffee wrong. She listens without interrupting, which is a kindness older siblings take years to learn. When I finish, she slides a napkin toward me and draws 3 boxes. Evidence, finances, boundaries. Pick the order, she says. I point to evidence. Good, she says, because feelings don't stand up in court, and you deserve clarity before you deserve closure. She tells me to stop guessing and start documenting, to move nothing illegal, to touch nothing that isn't mine. You're not hunting a confession, she says. You're building a timeline. When the check comes, she grabs it, like always. In the parking lot, she hugs me hard enough to hurt. Text me if anything changes, she says. And Ryan, don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Back home, I fold laundry like it's a breathing exercise. It keeps my hands busy while my head writes rules I should have written sooner. Boundary isn't punishment. It's a handrail. I move my tools from the hall closet to the garage and label the bins like I'm teaching a class. I change the Wi-Fi password because it's 3 pets and a birth year, and that's irresponsible even if your marriage is rock solid. I put our passports in the fire safe. I don't slam doors. I open windows. The house smells like cut grass and lemon cleaner by the time I sit down. I draft a simple note I'll read if I need it. We speak calmly. We speak once. We put it in writing. It's not a threat. It's a policy. I tuck the note into the evidence folder, close the laptop, and feel my shoulders drop half an inch. Then my phone vibrates, and the name on the screen is Grant. I let it ring out. Voicemail catches his polished baritone and asks me to call back at my earliest convenience. My earliest convenience will be never. 10 minutes later, Sam texts, "Crazy day, might be late." I reply, "Okay, be safe." That's the last time I lie to myself. I set a fresh mug on the counter and take a seat, where I can see the front door and the kitchen clock at the same time. The second hand sweeps. The house settles. Outside, Muller's dog walkers fade into porch lights. I line up the receipts, the notes, and the little truths that add up to one larger truth. Drift became a pattern. Pattern became a plan. Plans leave footprints. At 8:47 p.m., my phone buzzes and the bank writes the next line of my story. Ember Hotel again. 2 entrees again. Champagne again. I copy the charge into the timeline, press save, and hear the garage door opener fail to start. She didn't park here tonight. 4 late nights don't look like much until you draw them on a calendar. I opened my planner with coffee rings and circled Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. Next to each, I wrote what I knew, not what I felt. Late meeting, team dinner, client emergency. Don't wait up. On the legal pad, I made 3 columns: time, place, receipt. It felt like laying out parts on a workbench. No blame, just pieces. I added the 8:47 p.m. Ember charge and the garage validation, then measured the gaps between leaving the office and pulling into our driveway. As I connected the circles with a straight edge, a pattern formed the way highways look from a plane. Obvious once you're above the clouds. People say your gut knows. Mine did. But I needed proof my head could hold. I set down the pen, looked at the calendar again, and realized the next Tuesday was tomorrow. Patterns like that don't break themselves. I built the timeline the way a mechanic builds a repair ticket. Symptoms first, then history, then probable cause. In symptoms, I wrote what any husband my age would recognize. Late texts, tired smiles, phone, face down. In history, I listed the new perfume, the sharper blazer, and the jokes about crushing Q3. For probable cause, I left a blank line, because innocence deserves the first chance. I synced my phone with the laptop clock and added exact call times, right down to the minute voicemail picked up. Then I laid the receipts next to the calendar and saw where the grooves matched. Older men talk about the feeling. Younger men say vibe. Whatever you call it, it settled in the room like the smell of burnt toast. I took one long breath, saved the file as 02 timeline, and closed the lid. Tomorrow, I will test the timeline. I wanted to meet that test with a level head and a steady hand. Date night didn't happen. Reheated potatoes did. At 10:45 p.m., the headlight slid across the blinds and stopped. The door eased open, soft as an apology. Sam came in smelling like hotel air, too clean in a way that's never home. "Client crisis," she said, setting down her tote. "Grant needed me." I nodded because nodding is what you do when you can't trust your voice. She kicked off her heels, winced, and asked if we had any ibuprofen. I pointed at the cabinet above the stove. The bottle rattled like a tiny lie. On TV, a rerun of a game I'd already watched tried to distract me with noise. Sam leaned against the counter, rolling her neck. "You okay?" she asked, like I was the one who'd been gone. "I'm fine," I said, which married men know can mean anything. She kissed my cheek. "Cool, quick, careful. Big push tomorrow," she added, already walking toward the stairs. The house swallowed her footsteps whole. Our bedroom door has a quirk. If you don't pull it tight, it eases open an inch as the AC kicks on. Tonight, it didn't latch. I heard it settle and saw a sliver of hallway light on the carpet. Small things tell big things. I lay still, counting the beats between Sam's shower shutting off and her phone buzzing on the dresser. I didn't look at the screen. A younger man might have. An older man knows that looking too soon can make you sloppy. "Long day," she said into the dark. "You should sleep." I said I would, then watched the ceiling fan audition for a hypnotist's gig. At 11:30, the house found its rhythm again. Plumbing quiet, fridge steady. The dog 2 doors down, giving up on whatever he was barking at. When her breathing evened out, my mind didn't. It kept reaching for a fact I could hold without breaking it. Just one hard edge for my hands. At 3 o'clock a.m., The truth feels like a loose floorboard. You know if you step wrong, it's going to creak. I padded to the kitchen, poured tap water, and watched the window turn me into a ghost. The laptop woke with that polite glow, and I opened Sam's work inbox, the one she'd signed into on our shared computer months back and never signed out of. No hacking, no guessing, just a left-behind door. The subject lines marched down the screen like a parade. Crush the deck. You're a star. Debrief at Ember. Then one from Grant at 9:12 p.m. Quick drink to celebrate closing the deal. I clicked. Couldn't have done it without you. Same time next week? The emoji didn't belong in a business note. I stared at it long enough to feel stupid. Then I screenshotted the thread, named it 03 Grant Thread, and told myself the same thing I tell junior techs. Don't argue with data. It doesn't care who's right. Sleep wasn't coming back, so I read what I'd already read again, hoping the words would turn into something else. They didn't. Grant's compliments had that too familiar shape, generous with praise, stingy with boundaries. Your instincts are unreal. You make everything better. Could use your magic tomorrow. I've written versions of those lines to people I mentor. I know what being healthy looks like. This wasn't it. At the bottom of the thread, a calendar invite sat like a thumbprint. Late brainstorm optional. Optional never means optional when the person in charge sends it. I captured that too, then scrolled back months and found the first spark, coffee to sync, and the second walk to think, and the third, ride to save time. You don't have to be a detective to see the slope. You just have to stop pretending it's flat. I organized the screenshots, closed the laptop, and let the silence tell me what I didn't want to admit. It was enough. Paper still does something that pixels can't. I printed the thread, the invite, and the receipts, slid them into clear sleeves, and snapped them into a cheap black binder with a cracked spine. On the front, I wrote Exhibit A with a Sharpie, then wiped the marker smell from my hands like I'd been handling gasoline. I tucked the binder behind the cookbooks, between chili and biscuits, a little joke for later that didn't feel funny yet. Men my age collect folders, taxes, warranties, the title to a car that's on its last set of brakes. This was just another folder. That's what I told myself. I poured another glass of water, put the printer back to sleep, and listened for any sound upstairs. Nothing. Down here, the binder waited, unblinking. It didn't ask me to fight or forgive. It just sat there, heavy as a tool you only buy once and hope you never need again. Friday arrived wearing that weekend promise older folks feel in our knees. I planned normal, hit the plant, fix what squeaks, be home by 6. At 5:30, I set 2 plates again because habit is stubborn, and at 6 I texted, "On time tonight?" No reply. At 7, the potatoes were perfect, and I called once. Voicemail. At 7:30, I called again, twice. Straight to voicemail like a door shutting in my ear. At 8:15, I switched from hope to routine and let the calls stack. 3, 4, 5. By 9, I wasn't angry. I was taking attendance. 10, 11, 12. The house held my side of the conversation like a church holds echoes. At 11:15, I left one message. I need to know you're safe. Then I stopped talking and kept dialing until the number was 17. I set the phone down and watched the clock hit 11:58, the same way you watch a light turn red when you've already decided to stop. American Express does not care about my marriage. It cares about timestamps. At 8:47 p.m., the alert hit. Ember Hotel Ember Room 404-96. A different total, the same pattern. 2 entrees, champagne. I didn't need dessert to know how the evening ended. The message sat next to my missed calls like a signed receipt for the truth. I screenshotted it, labeled it 04 Ember Repeat, and slid it into the folder. My father used to say, "A man can ignore a lot, but don't ignore math." 17 calls plus 2 dinners didn't equal client crisis. It equaled a choice. I stood at the sink and ran the water hot, hotter, hottest, until the steam chased the night from the window. Outside, Muller's porch lights blinked out one by one. Inside, my kitchen got brighter. Funny how that happens. When I turned off the tap, the house made that little settling noise it makes at midnight. The only thing left to do was wait. I didn't pace. I sat. I turned on the small light over the sink, the one that makes our kitchen look like a photograph from the 90s, and set a plate in front of the empty chair. Not angry, prepared. There's a difference. Men in my crowd have learned that yelling feels good for 10 seconds and costs you a week. I wanted change that would stick. I slid the binder onto the table, closed, not displayed. I poured water, not whiskey. Then I practiced saying 3 sentences without cracking. I know where you were. I know who you were with. Here is what happens next. The dog next door barked twice and gave up. The fridge cycled. My phone lay face up, silent now, like it was ashamed of the evening it had recorded. At 12:07 a.m., a key scraped the lock. I didn't move. The doorknob turned. She stepped into the light I'd left on for truth. Sam stopped when she saw the table, the single plate, the binder, me. She opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and leaned her hip against the counter the way she does when she wants to look casual. "We should talk," she said, beating me to my lines. "Grant and I, today, it happened." She didn't stumble on the noun. "I don't regret it." The bottle hissed as she set it down too hard. I watched the sweat bead on the glass and thought about the last time we split a beer on the back steps. August heat and cicadas and nothing to hide. I forked a bite of lasagna I didn't taste. "Thank you for telling me," I said, because that's polite. And I was raised to be polite. Then I put the fork down and slid the binder closer to my hands, not hers. "Now you're going to listen." Her eyebrows lifted like she'd misheard the casting. This wasn't the script she brought home. I didn't shout. I didn't list my pain like a grocery receipt. I named the facts, the calendar, the receipts, the emails, the 17 calls, the 8:47 p.m. The words were small wrenches, and I turned each one only as far as needed. "You made a choice," I said, "so I'm making mine." Her mouth opened, closed, opened. She reached for a cushion, and the woman grabbed softness when the floor drops and said, "Can we talk about why?" I held up a palm. "No, because this isn't a counseling session. This is a boundary." I told her she could sleep in the guest room tonight and pack a bag in the morning. I told her I'd speak to my attorney at 7. I told her we would put things in writing, not in raised voices. She laughed once, small and wrong. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, surprised that my voice found the steady I'd been missing. And then I did something I never do. I ended the conversation. I sent Natalie an email with the binder scans and the timeline attached, and the subject line read like a verdict. "Next steps." She replied in 3 minutes. "I'm drafting separation terms. Do not touch anything that isn't yours. Freeze her cards on your accounts only. Document, don't debate." I opened banking, removed Sam as an authorized user, and froze the joint card we only use for groceries and emergencies. I changed my passwords, the important ones you only ever mean to change later. I pulled copies of tax returns and tucked them beside the binder, then set calendar invites for consultations like I'd set maintenance windows. Somewhere upstairs, the guest bed creaked. I stood at the sink, the same spot where we'd once planned vacations, and rinsed my plate until the water ran hot and clean. When I turned off the tap, the house held its breath. Paperwork isn't dramatic, it's decisive. And sometimes that's the only kind of strength you've got. At dawn, I walked through the house like a superintendent doing rounds. I collected my tools from the hall closet and returned them to the garage where they belong. I tested the fire safe, checked that passports and titles were inside, and slid in a fresh flash drive labeled Walker Records. I set the Wi-Fi to a new password only I could remember without writing down. I took her spare key off my ring and placed it in a dish by the door with a note. "For pickup with your bag." Not petty. Clear. I made a list for later: the utilities to separate, the streaming services to cancel, the insurance to review. Older men know these tasks are boring until they save your hide. The sun found the kitchen window, turned my coffee gold, and for a second, I felt both proud and tired, like after a long repair finished right. Upstairs, the shower started. A minute later, it stopped. I stepped onto the porch with my mug and watched Austin yawn awake joggers with headlamps, delivery trucks groaning through Muller, a sky turning the color of old denim. Anger buzzed in my jaw like a drill I didn't need to pick up. I let it buzz and said nothing. My father used to tell me, anger is fuel. Proof is fire. Don't cook your life on the wrong one. I held both in my hands, warm and dangerous, and decided which would light the day. Behind me, the guest room door opened. Suitcase wheels whispered across hardwood. No slam, no speech, just movement. Good. We were finally out of the talking business. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and said a quiet prayer, not for mercy, but for order. Then I went back inside, opened the binder to the first page, and began the work of turning a storm into a straight line. Natalie met me at her office before sunrise, lights still off on the floor, Austin just beginning to yawn. She slid coffee across the table and spoke like a foreman setting day one expectations. We work in silence, she said. No grand speeches, paper, process, pace. She drew 3 boxes on a legal pad, evidence, finances, boundaries, and tapped each with her pen. You keep your voice low, your records clean, and your shoes pointed forward. It sounded simple because it needed to be. Older men know that real strength isn't volume, it's follow-through. We outlined steps, temporary separation, limited contact, documented exchanges. When she finished, she closed the folder and looked me in the eye. You don't have to win today, you just have to move the ball. I nodded, and as I stood, she added one more line. And Ryan, no heroics, I promised. The elevator doors opened with a chime, and I stepped into the kind of quiet that means work has started. Back home, I turned the kitchen table into a field desk. Natalie emailed the separation draft with bullet points a man could live by. Residence rules, financial access, property care, respectful communication. I read them out loud to the empty room because hearing them made them real. Then I signed where I needed to sign. The printer whispered out clean pages, the way a good tool should. I slid copies into the black binder, labeled a new tab, Separation, and dated the spine with today's date the day order returned. I texted Sam, document ready. We'll discuss logistics at 7 p.m. Kitchen table. Calm voices. No threat, no bait, just the schedule. My dad used to say the most grown-up thing a man can do is put things in writing and stand behind the ink. I poured a glass of water, not whiskey, and waited for the sense that I'd just pushed a heavy door. It moved. Natalie filed the HR packet to Valor Tech neutral wording, tight facts, no adjectives. It referenced policy by number, dates by timestamp, and asked for nothing but process, acknowledgement, investigation, closed loop. I copied the email to a folder called Employer because clarity beats drama, and I'm not a man who hunts torches. Older guys I respect taught me that systems don't love you, but they can protect you if you use them right. 15 minutes later, HR confirmed receipt with the kind of language you hear on airplanes. Professional, calm, and interested in not crashing. I set the phone down and exhaled. No victory lap, just traction. I sent Natalie a thumbs up and got back 3 words. Stay predictable today. I smiled at that. Predictability is a virtue when you're building a straight line through a crooked hour. The front door creaked just the wood adjusting to the heat, and I realized I'd adjusted too. I changed the Wi-Fi password to something only a tired husband would remember. Then logged where I used it because future me always forgets. I boxed Sam's things the way I'd want mine boxed. Folded, labeled, nothing tossed. Clothes in one, toiletries in another. Chargers coiled, not knotted. Her favorite mug went on top, wrapped in a dish towel from our first apartment. I wasn't punishing history. I was protecting tomorrow. I set the boxes in the living room with a calm note. Everything you asked for. Let me know if I missed something. The guest room was made of fresh sheets, clean towel, quiet dignity. Men my age understand hospitality even in the hard parts. It keeps you from disliking yourself in the mirror. When I was done, I stood in the doorway and listened to the way the house sounded without accusation. It sounded like a place where adults lived. Then my phone buzzed. 7 p.m. works, Sam wrote. At 7 sharp, Sam stepped inside, saw the labeled boxes, and paused like a shopper deciding if the sale was worth it. We kept our promise. Calm voices. She asked for the blue blazer, the vitamins in the pantry, and the photo of her father from the hallway. I fetched each item without commentary and set them gently in her reach. The air felt like a church basement safe, simple, undecorated. "Is this all necessary?" she asked, not to challenge, but to mourn. "Yes," I said, "because clarity is kinder than chaos." She nodded once, then packed in silence, the way people do when they know a conversation is over, even if the words keep circling. At the door, she turned as if to start a speech. I spared her. "Everything you need is there," I said. "Good night, Sam." Her eyes flashed hurt, maybe relief, maybe both. The latch clicked. I stood still long enough to feel my pulse slow. The next morning, I lifted what I could control. Iron and a skillet. At the gym, Caleb spotted me like he always does, then didn't say a word until I racked the bar. "You look like a man who needs protein and a plan," he said, half joke, half diagnosis. We walked to the cafe window for black coffee and talked in the language menus when they're rebuilding short sentences, long pauses, nothing performative. "You want to put something on the table tomorrow morning?" he asked, that grin that gets him free upgrades working as usual. I knew what he meant. The breakfast she loved, served to someone else as a mirror. "It's not revenge," I said. "It's a boundary she can't talk over." He nodded. "I'll be there. Eggs, sharp cheddar, bacon, correct?" "Correct." We bumped fists like teenagers and laughed because the alternative was a knot in the throat. Climax. A plan that didn't require shouting. At 7:30 a.m., the kitchen smelled like the old morning coffee. Bacon. Toast cut corner to corner. Caleb sat in Sam's usual chair, casual as Saturday, complimenting my eggs with pro-level seriousness. "These are criminally good," he said, loud enough for the staircase to hear. Footsteps. Sam appeared, stopped at the threshold, and took in the scene. A place set. A guest eating. A husband standing exactly where he meant to. "We're having breakfast," I said. "You're welcome to a plate by the window." Her eyes flared at the chair, at the empty space that used to be hers. Sometimes a picture explains what paragraphs can't. She took a breath, like a swimmer deciding whether to dive, and chose not to. "I'll grab my things," she said instead. Caleb lifted his mug in a silent toast, and the moment hung there, polite and undeniable. The climax wasn't volume. It was that chair filled by someone who respected the kitchen. When the door closed behind her, Caleb raised an eyebrow. "You sure you don't want me to leave you one great one-liner?" I shook my head. No speeches. She had her confession. I have my boundary. We finished our plates like regular men with regular morning's forks scraping, coffee cooling, silence doing the heavy lifting. I bagged a portion and labeled it tomorrow because planning proves to yourself that you expect a tomorrow. Caleb rinsed his dish, set it neatly in the rack, and clapped my shoulder. "You handled that like a grown-up," he said. "That shouldn't feel rare, but it does." After he left, I wiped the table, folded the napkins, and put the chair back under the edge. The house looked like a diagram of calm. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Call from Natalie in 10. I smiled at the timing. Consequence had landed. Revenge never needed to show up. Natalie's voice was brisk. "Heads up, Elena called me. Grant's wife, doctor, calm as a cutting tool. She'd seen the Amex statements and, more importantly, the parking charges that match Sam's. She's filing her own paperwork, Natalie said, and she's forwarding Valor Tech security concerns to their board counsel. I pictured that woman in hospital scrubs, steady hands, heartbeat counting under her fingers, deciding to press a different kind of pressure. Ryan, Natalie added, softer now. She's not your ally and not your enemy. She's handling her side. I thanked her, then texted Elna a single line. I'm sorry we're here. She replied with the same economy. You didn't put us here. In my age bracket, marriage is a team sport until it's triage. I set the phone down and went to the garage to sweep. Men sweep when they can't fix a building. The climax. I wasn't the only one drawing lines today. By afternoon, the rumor mill did what it did. A former coworker pinged me, then a neighbor, then a friend of a friend, who happened to hear about a Valor Tech VP leaving a meeting pale. Gossip is lousy fuel, so I kept my tank empty. Instead, I checked the mailbox and found a simple envelope from the bank confirming account change proof that I didn't care for spectacle. On the porch, Mrs. Patterson waved from across the street, her small dog dragging her like a kite. You okay, hon? She called. I'm setting better rules, I said, and she nodded like I'd finally fixed a squeaky hinge she'd noticed for years. Inside, I stacked documents in the binder, breathed through 10 slow counts, and felt something like dignity park itself in my ribs. The tipping point wasn't headlines. It was the quiet click of systems catching, of grown-up choices taking the weight. Monday at 8:05 a.m., an email arrived from Valor Tech HR. We'd like to schedule separate interviews. Effective immediately. Both employees are on administrative leave, pending investigation. The phrases were dry as toast, but they tasted like relief. Natalie forwarded the note to me with a short, process starting. I replied, received, and left it at that. Men like me believe in process because we've been burned by personalities. I went for a short walk around Muller, past joggers, strollers, and the guy who always waves from his porch no matter what. The city sounded normal, leaf blowers, a delivery truck, a laugh from a yard where someone was fixing a fence. Back home, I placed the HR email behind Exhibit A and let the binder's weight remind me why I'd started keeping score. The climax was small, but it counted. The company had stepped onto the field. Sam texted at noon. On leave, meeting with HR Wednesday. I typed, acknowledged, please route communications through email, then set the phone down before my fingers tried to say more than my boundaries allowed. My generation learned to fix things with our hands. Sometimes the fix is not touching anything at all. I forwarded her text to Natalie and added a one-line note, status update only. She wrote back, good, keep everything in one lane. In the afternoon, I replaced a porch light I'd been ignoring. It felt like cheating to feel proud about a bulb, but pride's allowed when you're rebuilding. As dusk slid in, I watched a kid ride a bike without training wheels, his dad jogging behind him with open hands and faith. The boy wobbled, then didn't. My night had a small echo of that, a balance rediscovered on a simple stretch of sidewalk. James Whitaker, Valor Tech's CEO, called in the early evening. His tone was steady, practiced, respectful. He apologized for events that shouldn't occur under any leadership, said the board had been briefed and promised a thorough review. No hush money, no spun sugar, just accountability vocabulary. I told him I wasn't seeking a payout, only an order and a closed loop. Men in my bracket talk about legacy more than they admit. Mine is acting like a decent adult when the script begs for theatrics. We'll handle it, he said. You have my word. Words are cheap, but sometimes they're the down payment on behavior. When I hung up, I wrote a quick summary, added it to the binder, and turned off the ringer. Outside, a summer storm tested the gutters. They held. That was the climax of the leadership saying, we'll handle it, while my house passed its own small stress test. Security met me at Valor Tech's lobby, Tom, the same guard who jokes about the Longhorns. He walked me to Sam's floor, where office boxes wore that embarrassed look cardboard gets when it's holding a life too quickly. Linda, Grant's assistant, approached with a file folder pressed to her chest. "I shouldn't have waited this long," she said, and handed me a stack of printouts. Calendar invites labeled optional, expense notes cleaned up with cheerful emojis, hallway camera stills stamped with dates. No gossip, just data. "I've copied HR," she added, as if apologizing to an honor code. "I hope you land okay." I thanked her, placed the folder into my binder, and lifted the boxes that contained photos of Sam's dad, her degree, the plant she always forgot to water. On the elevator down, Tom nodded at the weight in my arms. "You're doing this right," he said. The doors opened to sunlight I hadn't expected. Back at the kitchen table, I spread the last of it out like a map. HR notices, CEO call notes, Linda's folder, the separation terms. I scanned, saved, and sent the full packet to Natalie with a subject line that would look boring to anyone else. "Consolidated, ready for signatures." I didn't post a thing, didn't call a soul to rehash, didn't pour a victory drink. I sharpened a pencil and drew a thin check mark in the margin next to each step we'd finished. Men my age love a checklist because it turns a hurricane into boxes you can fill. The house exhaled. The refrigerator hummed. A neighbor's wind chime gave a small laugh at the breeze. I closed the binder, pressed my palm to the cover, and felt the quiet thud of a job done right for today. Justice isn't loud, it signs. Valor Tech released the memo on a Tuesday, the same weekday our date nights used to live. It was 3 paragraphs of corporate cool, policy, expectations, leadership change. Grant's name sat in the middle like a fallen stop sign terminated effectively immediately. Sam's status was resigned, the soft word people use when the exit wasn't gentle. I read it once, then again, mostly to prove to myself I wasn't reading what I wanted. But what was there? The inbox chimed with the predictable echoes, HR scheduling follow-ups, IT confirming access changes, a final line about reporting concerns directly. I didn't forward it to anyone. I slid it into the binder behind Exhibit A and set the binder down for what I hoped was the last time today. Outside, the UPS truck grunted away, and a kid on a scooter laughed, like the world didn't know how to be heavy. The memo didn't feel like victory. It felt like a door finally latching. By Thursday, Sam's car was packed. 3 boxes, 2 suitcases, 1 plant that had never liked our kitchen light. She said she'd sublet a place near Riverside until she figured things out, which is the code grown-ups use when the map doesn't match the road. We stood at the curb like 2 people returning a rental, polite and impersonal. She asked if I needed anything else from her office, stash extra notebooks, and a decent stapler. I shook my head and said, "Drive safe." No curses, no blessing, just the ordinary words you give someone who's no longer your responsibility. The neighbor's dog nosed my hand as the trunk closed, a small warmth in a morning that didn't offer many. When she pulled away, I didn't wave. I watched the brake lights turn right at the corner where we used to walk at dusk. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was earned. The house didn't echo. It breathed. There's a moment after any big move when the room looks bigger and smaller at the same time. I started at the bookshelf and worked clockwise, the way my dad taught me to clean garages one wall, then the next. No zigzagging. I filled a donation box with things that were good, but no longer ours. Extra picture frames, a vase we kept for politeness, the souvenir wine stoppers we always forgot to use. I kept 1 mug, the chipped white one with the thin handle that fits my thumb like it was made for me. Morning coffee always tasted right in that mug, even on bad days. I wiped the counter, shook out the rug, and found a dime under the stove, tarnished and honest. Men my age keep coins like tiny promises. I dropped it in the junk drawer beside the flashlight and new batteries. When I stepped back, the kitchen wasn't bare. It was clear. The difference mattered. I assembled 1 last box for the porch. An old jacket of mine she loved for cold movie theaters, a paperback she never finished, a scarf I bought in December when we still called each other first. I wrote a note and kept it short. If anything else turns up, I'll set it out. Be well. Then I locked the door and stood still until the urge to unlock it passed. A man I work with once told me grief is like sorting bolts. You make piles by size and hope your hands remember the system. I made a pile for what was and another for what is. The second pile won. The sun slid through the blinds and landed on the mug I'd kept, a simple spotlight on a simple thing. I poured water, watched it bead on the rim, and decided to start counting my days from here, not from there. The box stayed where it belonged, outside. My mother doesn't waste words. She came by with a casserole that could feed a small church and a hug that might have cracked my ribs when I was younger. We sat at the table and ate in the quiet way families do when the fork does the talking. "You did right," she said finally, wiping a corner of her eye like it was smoke, not salt. "You didn't shout. You didn't showboat. You just did the work. That's how men win without losing themselves." I told her about the binder and the signatures and the chair at breakfast, and she nodded like I'd fixed a fence she'd been staring at for years. "Con," she said, stopping herself on the nickname because adults remember to adjust. "Ryan, you won in silence." She squeezed my hand and glanced at the mug in front of me. "Keep that one," she added. "It suits you." When she left, the house felt bigger than my trouble. I met Elena outside St. David's, where the parking lot always smells faintly like hand sanitizer and rain. She wore scrubs and that morning's fatigue, but her eyes were steady, the kind you want when your heart misbehaves. We didn't swap war stories. We swapped logistics. Her lawyer, my lawyer, the calendar slots, the emails that should be saved and the ones that can be ignored. She handed me a copy of a board note she'd been given clinical, quiet, final. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it for everything. She nodded once, the way surgeons nod when the truth is the only acceptable dose. "Justice tastes like burnt coffee," she said, half smile, half sigh. "It's not sweet, but it wakes you up." We agreed to stay out of each other's headlines. No need to heal out loud. As she walked back in, a patient waved. She waved back without breaking stride. The hospital doors hissed shut, and the day kept moving. Elena and I grabbed coffee the following week because a nurse insisted we needed something real, not the waiting room kind. We sat on a bench under a tree that had seen a lot of people hear a lot of bad news. She asked how I was sleeping. I said, "Better than I deserve, worse than I want." She laughed in that soft, warm way people laugh when they know. She told me she'd moved her grandmother's quilt onto the couch and slept there a few nights. The weight of it, a better medicine than anything she could prescribe. We didn't flirt. We didn't trade glances over the rim of paper cups. We talked about yard work and taxes and why the vending machines at hospitals never stock the good chips. When we stood, we shook hands like neighbors. "See you around," she said. "At tennis," I answered without thinking. "Bring terrible serves," she replied. "That's my specialty." A small promise, the right size. Zilker's courts crackle at 9 a.m. Balls, laughter, terrible footwork. Elena and I took a far court and warned the people next to us that we were both new and unashamed. Our serves were crimes in 3 states. We laughed, then tried again, then laughed harder. There's a piece in doing something badly with another adult who isn't keeping score. Between points, we swapped small truths people our age collect. How grief hits at the grocery store. How fixing a leaky faucet at 10 p.m. can feel like a parade. How sleep can be more important than food when mornings wear heavy boots. A guy in a burnt orange cap yelled, "Hook 'em!" after Elena shanked one into the fence, and she saluted him with her racket like a comic. After an hour, our shirts were damp, our pride intact, and our shoulders lighter. "Same time next week?" she asked. "Absolutely," I said. We gathered stray balls and left the scoreboard at love. Back at the plant, my manager handed me the kind of assignment older hands get for a reason. Stabilize a line nobody trusts. Teach a kid how to hear a bearing before it screams, and leave the place better than you found it. Taylor's air smelled like dust and heat, the honest kind. I walked the floor with a clipboard and ears open, asked a dozen small questions, and listened for the answer behind the answer. Machines don't lie. People try not to. The kid shadowing me, Marcus, barely old enough to rent a car, took notes like a court reporter. "What are we fixing first?" he asked. "The thing that will break if we ignore it," I said. He nodded, like something clicked behind his eyes. At lunch, we ate in the shade of a loading dock and swapped stories about first cars and bad haircuts. When the shift ended, the line sounded less angry. That's as close to applause as our work gets. 2 weeks into the project, the numbers turned our way. Fewer alarms, smoother starts, a maintenance log that stopped looking like a cry for help. It wasn't hero work. It was broom and screwdriver work, the kind older men respect because it shows up every day and asks for no spotlight. I brought in kolaches on Friday and watched the crew devour them like they'd been fasting for a month. "For luck," I said, and someone slapped the side of a machine twice, a ritual we didn't invent but believed in anyway. Before heading out, Marcus asked why I kept a pocket notebook when everything lives on screens. "Because batteries die," I said, patting the cover. He laughed, then bought one that afternoon. I drove home with his radio low and the AC too high, the kind of drive that makes you think about nothing and everything. The house waited, not as a question mark, but as a period. Work, then rest. Simple, earned. 3 months after the binder, I made the same breakfast I used to make for two: eggs with sharp cheddar, toast buttered to the edge, coffee with 2 sugars. The kitchen was quiet except for the radio and the skillet's polite sizzle. I set 1 plate instead of 2 and didn't feel the emptiness the math suggests. The first bite tasted like a memory I wanted to keep, not a ghost I needed to chase. I sat where I always sit, back to the window so the morning could tap my shoulder, and chewed slow on purpose. A lot of men my age rush through meals like there's a finish line waiting in the sink. Today, I let the coffee cool to perfect. When I washed the plate, I dried it completely and put it away, a tiny ceremony that told my brain the day had started right. Outside, a lawnmower coughed awake. Inside, I set the mug down and didn't flinch at the silence. The radio forecasted clear skies over Austin, the kind of sentence that feels like permission. I opened the windows and let the house trade air with the morning. The curtain breathed in and out like a slow jogger. I swept the porch, waved at Mrs. Patterson, and admired how azaleas show off without apology. For the first time in a while, my phone stayed face down because it had nothing urgent to say. I found the tennis balls in the hall closet and smiled at how many we'd collected by playing poorly. The calendar had regular shapes again. Work, sleep, groceries, Saturday at 9. Some people mistake routine for boredom. At my age, we call it peace. I made a list for the afternoon: oil change, light bulbs, a call to the fence guy. Then I did something small and radical. I took a nap. When I woke, the sun had moved 2 inches across the floor, and nothing hurt. Evenings aren't echoey anymore. They hum. I read on the couch with 1 lamp on and the ceiling fan finding its honest speed. I don't jump when a car door shuts outside. I don't listen for a key. Quiet used to scare me because it sounded like absence. Now it sounds like space for a thought to finish, room for a feeling to land and leave. I wrote a single sentence on an index card and set it near the TV. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a boundary. It looks almost silly propped against the remote, but it keeps me from inviting noise for company. After dinner, I took a slow walk around the block and noticed things I used to miss. A new wind chime, the dog with 1 good ear, the kid who finally nails the basketball shot he's practiced for weeks. Back home, I washed my face, turned off the lamp, and let the right kind of quiet do its job. In the morning light, the ring sat where I'd left it on the little plate by the sink, catching the sun like it was auditioning for a jewelry ad. I picked it up and felt the weight I'd stopped feeling years ago. Metal remembers the warmth of skin. It took a second to cool in my palm. I didn't make a speech. I didn't thank them for their service. I walked it to the fire safe, opened the door, and set it beside documents that still matter. Some men toss things to prove a point. I've learned points don't need landfills. I closed the safe and pressed my hand flat against the steel, not for drama, just to feel the final click. On the counter, my mug waited, chipped and perfect. Sun slid across the floor and climbed the wall like a slow tide. I raised the mug in a quiet toast to the man who drew the line and kept it. Then I started my day. Revenge would have been loud. It would play well online and burn out by morning. Order is quieter, and it stays. I didn't win by breaking things. I won by fixing what I could name, signing what I could stand behind, and letting systems handle the rest. The breakfast chair is filled again by respect, not performance. The binder sleeps in a drawer. The mug waits on the counter. The line I drew didn't punish her. It protected me. Men my age don't need fireworks. We need sleep, clean ledgers, and a lock that answers every time. So here's the payoff. I kept my dignity. I kept my word. And I kept the door open for a better man to walk through me. Forgive or boundary. I choose boundaries. In choosing it, I forgave myself. Screen to black. White letters. Justice isn't loud. It signs. Then quiet. Not empty, but earned, the kind that gives tomorrow room to arrive on time. And steady.